Thank you for the click. My name is Luxeley, and today we're going to talk about the top 10 reasons why BFA will succeed. Now, right about now, you might be thinking, Luxeley, you're some kind of freaky fanboy. The reality is, I'm not really looking to predict BFA's success or even failure going forward with the upcoming 8 whatever patches. In the interest of being both fair and objective, I uploaded 2 videos which discuss 2 things. One, top 10 reasons why BFA will fail, and top 10 reasons why BFA will succeed. As players, we need to applaud good ideas and criticize bad ideas. As long as we do this, and by doing this, our chances to bring out Blizzard's A game greatly improve. Now, contrary to popular belief out there, Blizzard does listen to their fans, their players, provided they do offer some constructive criticism. Now, unlike the top 10 reasons why BFA will fail video, I will go into the new features in this particular video. Now, most of the successful features introduced in other X packs still exist in game, and Blizzard found a very unique way to expand and improve upon them with each X pack going forward. For example, Cataclysm. We have transmogs introduced in one of the patches, and in Legion, Mythic Plus was introduced, as well as an improvement on dailies in making them world quests. And there have been many features like this that Blizzard has introduced and improved on over the years. The point is, BFA does offer quite a bit of potential going forward, and some of these features could very well be improved or expanded on in the upcoming patches. And now, without further ado, here's the top 10 list on why BFA will succeed going forward and lend a very positive influence to WoW's legacy. The WoW token, or the WoW economy, is one of the more underappreciated values in World of Warcraft. Let me explain. Right now, the currency of the WoW token probably presents greater value than the currency of most, if not the overwhelming majority, of third world countries. There's a lot of clout to this particular currency, and it's a win-win for all parties involved. It's a win for Blizzard because they charge $20 and they get an extra $5 for a sub fee. It's a win for the players because they could get some extra gold, or they can also pay their sub fee by earning extra gold. So it's a win-win for the players, and I do think as a whole it's very good for the game, and here's why. Ask yourself this question: when is the last time you saw a gold farmer aggressively, absolutely spam trade chat looking for business? Remember back in Wrath of the Lich King, even in Cata, they used to spell out their promotions with dead bodies? This is a thing of the past. Yes, there are still a couple of gold farmers out there here and there, but it's not as profitable for them to be in this market. As a matter of fact, it's really not a profitable market for them anymore. And the reality is, pretty much, Blizzard has just all but done away with gold farmers. I gotta say it again, this is a win-win scenario. This is a very good addition to the game. Now, when the WoW token starts to go north of, say, 150 gold on the auction house, all bets are off. The higher it goes, then you're starting to get into ridiculous land, and no, it's not really affordable for a lot of people. But as long as it maintains the level that we're at now, which is bobbing between, say, 105 and 115 gold for a token, it's a very fair and reasonable price, and one of the more underappreciated assets in World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is still alive. Now, it might be kind of weird for me to say, well, just because you're still alive and kicking, you get to make the top 10 list. But if you really think about it, you no longer can count the WoW killers on one hand. There have been plenty of WoW killers out there. Matter of fact, one of the WoW killers, Wildstar, remember that game? Well, it's going out of business. It's going to be deleted. It's no longer going to be available, I think, as of sometime in November. And the only 2 WoW killers that I could think of, or maybe 3 WoW killers that I could think of that are still alive and kicking and doing well, not doing great, but doing well, are Elder Scrolls Online, Star Wars The Old Republic, and Guild Wars 2. Those 3 games are doing pretty decent, but still, overall, not doing as well as World of Warcraft. If you want to throw Final Fantasy into the mix, fine, but Final Fantasy was never really considered to be a WoW killer. And one of the big reasons why World of Warcraft has endured, we're talking 14 years, is because it is a franchise. It is a brand. It is something that really is established. And when I think of World of Warcraft, I often compare the game to the Star Wars franchise, or I compare the game to the Star Trek franchise. Star Wars has been around for 40 years. Star Trek has been around for 50 years. You could even throw Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones in there as well. But 40, 50 years, Star Wars, Star Trek, the reality is they had some downtime, but they've bounced back. You won't even compare World of Warcraft to Great American pastime, baseball. You could do that too. Baseball had a downtime in the 1920s, early 1920s because of the Black Sox scandal. And then it had another rough time in the early 2000s because of steroids scandal. And the reality is, baseball has endured. Great brands endure. Yes, they have downtimes. We can easily say that BFA might be a downtime. We know Warlords of Draenor the Fun was a downtime. But I'm very confident this game will endure and bounce back. And one of the reasons why we haven't really seen a lot of WoW killers out there. Now, we could go out there and find top 10 MMOs for 2018, top 10 MMOs for 2019, etc., 2021. The reality is, we're not talking any of these MMOs being WoW killers anymore. And we're not seeing as many MMOs come into fruition because the cost, the barrier to entry is absolutely astronomical. There are rumors that it cost ESO as well as Star Wars The Old Republic over $200 million to produce. So Blizzard is in a really good position. They know it. Their brand is alive. And yes, it might be tainted a little bit, but I guarantee we all know it's going to bounce back. World of Warcraft does present a tremendous amount of value. And yes, if you go back and look at some of my older videos, back in Warlords of Draenor the Fun, Legion, even Mist of Pandaria, the reality is I've said that the value in WoW has been depreciated, but it's got a long way to go before that value is really something that people don't take into account. And of course, I'm comparing the value of playing World of Warcraft to the value of other entertainment. How much does it cost if you're going to go to a movie once a month? If you go to a movie once a month and you buy yourself popcorn, a soda, and the movie ticket, let's say you want to splurge and see 3D, the reality is it's going to cost you roughly 2 or 3 months subscription fee right then and there. And that's only one movie in a given month. So it's 2-3 hours of entertainment as opposed to a whole amount of limitless entertainment with World of Warcraft. Want to compare it to a concert? The price that it would cost you to go see a concert. Want to compare it to a sporting event? Baseball, soccer, football, basketball, hockey, you name it. World of Warcraft is significantly cheaper. World of Warcraft is even significantly cheaper than buying one DVD per month. The reality is, even if you're a big game fan, how many games do you buy within a given year? My guess is probably 3 or more. If you are a hardcore gamer, you're buying 3 or more games, that's $180. That's your subscription fee right there. And then maybe you have to throw in another $20 to $25 per year because you're splitting the cost of $50, $60 over a 2-year period to buy an X-Pack every 2 years. So the reality is there's a tremendous amount of value in World of Warcraft when you compare it to sports, you compare it to movies, you compare it to even buying other games, you compare it to events. It's pretty darn cheap. And when you add in the fact that you could generate gold in order to pay your subscription fee, it's really, really cheap. And it does offer and present a tremendous amount of value. The tech team at WoW is actually pretty darn phenomenal. And yes, if you look at my older videos, I've made plenty of jokes about how the WoW servers are held together with bubblegum and dental floss. That's just what those are. Those are jokes. The reality is, in any business, especially in the tech business, things are not always going to go right. Matter of fact, you could almost bet that somewhere along the line, something isn't going to work as intended, something isn't going to shine, and that's when you're going to really see a company's real value. That is a testament to a company's success, how quickly they can fix a mistake. And on the tech side of things, Blizzard actually is pretty good at this. They are pretty Johnny on the spot and quick with fixing things. During the pre-launch, there were some issues. Blizzard fixed them to the point that the launch was pretty good. You didn't expect the launch for BFA to be that great considering the previous issues they had during the pre-patch, but it was pretty smooth. There was a major catastrophe when they launched Warlords of Draenor the Fun, and they fixed that pretty quickly. And you could go back in time and you could see that, yes, sometimes the downtime was a day or two, but it really didn't, you didn't see days turn into weeks. and problems become unaddressed. Now, when I talk about problems, I'm talking about problems that pertain to PvE. Anything with PvP can stay broken for quite some time. But on the PvE side of things, when it comes to dungeons, when it comes to raids, when it comes to Mythic Plus, even in leveling, the bottom line, Blizzard is pretty quick to step in there and fix things. And when you consider that there have been so many X-Packs in this game, I believe 8 X-Packs, and that the game engine is close to 20 years old because it dates back to Warcraft 3, or at least the original one does. That's pretty phenomenal. When you start tagging on systems on top of systems on top of systems, and I could go on and on and on for quite some time, that's pretty phenomenal. The complexity of that is pretty huge. And Blizzard, yeah, things don't always go right, but when they do go wrong, Blizzard doesn't let days turn into weeks. And that is something that's greatly underappreciated and certainly worthy of being mentioned in the top 10. There's more to do in World of Warcraft than ever before, and that's kind of a fact. I never understood the players who sit there in Stormwind or Orgrimmar, they go AFK, they catch up on Hulu or Netflix or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. They're watching something while they're hanging out, Stormwind, Orgrimmar, just doing the catch-up, just add catch-up to it, whatever it is you're doing. And the reality is there is a hell of a lot to do in-game. I think players are really saying, oh, I'm kind of bored, this isn't very engaging, this isn't very interesting, this isn't very progressive. That part I kind of do get, but there is a lot to do. And I guarantee you, people haven't tried most of these things, if not some of these things. For example, on the PvE side of the game, you have Isle Expeditions, you have Warfronts, you have Mythic Plus, LFR, regular raids, heroic raids, mythic raids. You could level another alt. It's not that hard to do, and it's a lot of fun. I always found the fun for me in the game has always been playing different classes. And yes, that means a huge commitment on my part. It makes me more of a jack of all trades and a master of maybe one or half a class. Yeah, half a class. But the fact is, there's just so much to do. And I just mentioned the PvE side of the game. What about the PvP side of the game? You have skirmishes, you have BGs, you have arena, you have war mode. There is a lot to do in game. And if you don't want to do any competitive things or any end-game things, you could just kind of build your wardrobe and do old raids and build up your X-Monks, or you could do pet battles, or you could raise some more alts. There is a lot to do. And just when you think you've done it all, guess what? Blizzard's probably just going to end up dangling a different carrot or moving the goalposts, because they're very good at that. That's kind of a bit annoying. It is a bit annoying, but it's the reality of any given MMO. There is a lot to do in this game, and probably more to do now in BFA than any other X-Pack. Granted, Isles may not be that epic thing, or Warfronts may not be that epic thing, but with regard to Isle Expedition, the fact is they keep on adding to it. They keep on working at it. It is still a work in progress, and I strongly believe there is a lot of potential there. They're not quite there yet. That much I'll say is probably a reality, but Isle Expeditions as they are not terrible, and they're not epic, but that needle is slowly moving towards the epic part. Fine. Regular, kind of boring. You always win. Heroic, you win 9 out of 10. But when you start getting into Mythic, or you start doing PvP Isle Expeditions, it really starts to get a little more interesting and a little more challenging. And it's actually pretty darn cool. It really is. It's a great way even just to level now. Of course, then you're going to have a little bit of a problem getting gear, etc., because you're going to be under-geared when you hit max level, but whatever. I think that there's more to do than ever before. There really is. The combat animations are phenomenal, especially when you consider the age of the game engine. Yes, there have been updates over time, and it's been updated system upon system upon system. And we all know, any tech geek knows, that's kind of hard to keep adding systems to systems. But the reality is Blizzard makes it work. And they've been upgrading and updating the animations since Warlords of Draenor All the Fun did a lot of it in Legion, and they're still doing it in BFA, and it shows. It's the visuals, it's the sound, it's just everything put together. It's what makes the game extraordinarily immersive. And it's so immersive that players don't even realize it sometimes. That's how good it is. That's how you really know that you're being drawn in, that your attention is hook, line, and sinker. And I have to say, the animations in World of Warcraft are as good as other MMOs that have game engines that aren't close to 20 years old, that are half the age. That is a phenomenal feat. That is really, really getting into uncharted territory of excellence. They've done an absolutely amazing job with the animations and made huge strides in this particular area. This is one area in the game that's always and consistently been very, very good. It's one of the core strengths of World of Warcraft. I don't think you could really, really knock it. Yeah, you might be able to find a little chink here. Maybe something doesn't really appeal to you, but I bet you those overall flaws that you find are more subjective than objective. And when you consider the age of the game engine, you consider what you're working with here, it really is an absolutely phenomenal achievement that Blizzard can deliver this, deliver it flawlessly, deliver it consistently with excellence. Immersion. I touched upon immersion a little bit with regard to combat animations, but it goes a lot deeper than that. It really does have a lot of legs to it. It's how it draws you into the class that you're playing, how it draws you into the race that you're playing, how it draws you into the overall world and the environment, the sounds, the details. Absolutely outrageously phenomenal. Blizzard has done an exceptional job here over the years, and it's only gotten better. There is so much depth here about a particular race's laugh, the jokes they tell, their laugh, their roar, their laugh, their crying, the sound they make when they crit. Just there's so much to this. There's so much depth. There's dance moves for every single race. It is so huge and underappreciated sometimes. Even bosses. Name a boss that doesn't trash talk you in a raid or in a heroic dungeon. They're all trash talking before they get their asses kicked. It's pretty amazing. These are the small things that often people don't realize draw them into the game. Little things like death animations are really draw you into the game. If we took all the death animations out of PvP, would it really draw you in as much as it does? Would it have the same effect? Would it have that same immersive effect? I've played a lot of MMOs, and the only one that's been able to sustain my attention other than World of Warcraft is Guild Wars 2. Star Wars The Old Republic, WildStar, ESO haven't given a fair shot, but and the list goes on and on and on. Final Fantasy XIV, they just don't hold my attention because they don't have that huge immersive effect that World of Warcraft has. There's a profound difference between playing an Orc Warrior and playing a Blood Elf Warrior, playing a Blood Elf Warrior and playing a Dwarf Warrior. It just draws you in, and there's so much complexity, so much history with the race that you're playing, with the faction that you're playing, with the zone that you're in. There are people that make so many videos, and then there's the whole lore aspect. I don't want to get too much into lore. That's the next segment, spoiler alert. But think about it. There are people still out there on the forums defending Garrosh. There are people out there defending the pyromaniac, tree-burning Sylvanas. People are drawn into these characters. People absolutely look up to these characters. Some of these characters are heroes for people, and rightfully so. And Blizzard really has a lot of depth, has a lot of history, and that whole immersion factor is something I strongly believe keeps people subscribed to World of Warcraft. The lore is phenomenal. The lore, granted, it's borrowed here and there from other sci-fi fantasy sources. Lich King is most definitely some sort of archetype of Darth Vader, and we could go on and on where they kind of beg and borrow, but this is sci-fi fantasy. Sci-fi fantasy begs and borrows and steals from each other. That's the genre. That's what it does, and it's kind of accepted. But World of Warcraft has such depth to its lore. Its lore breathes. Its lore has a history. Its lore has a memory. This is a canon that goes back almost 25, 30 years. That's a lot of story. It's as rich as, say, the Star Trek franchise or the Star Wars franchise, the Lord of the Rings franchise, the Game of Thrones franchise. Tremendous lore with NPCs that interact with you throughout the storyline, throughout the X-Packs, and some of them just don't go away, like Jaina Proudmoore or Sylvanas, pretty much a part of every single X-Pack. You even have some very compelling characters that have very interesting story arcs For example, Anduin, we've known him as a young boy. Then we've known him as being lost somewhere in Mist of Pandaria looking for some healing well. And now he's forced into being a warrior and being a fighter and going to war. And this is a guy who's essentially a priest, who's a healer. He doesn't want to go to war. Very, very interesting story type. You could say the same thing about Yrel from Warlords of Draenor the Fawn. I thought one of the more compelling characters, very, Mother of Dragons-like, very Daenerys-like, but I loved it. I really, really loved it. I thought that was one of the saving graces of Warlords of Draenor the Fawn. And I'm sorry we didn't see more of Yrel in Legion or BFA. But there are some very compelling characters, and Blizzard is smart enough and slippery enough to find ways to get those NPCs to interact with you on a regular basis in game. I remember even doing different dungeons in Wrath of the Lich King with Jaina Proudmoore, or doing different cutscenes with Jaina Proudmoore and Anduin's dad. I mean, there's a lot. You have a guy who was king, and now his son is king, and his dad was king. I mean, this is a generational thing, and it has a history, it has a breadth, it has depth, and you can't say that about every single MMO. This could very well be one of the reasons outside the end game of why new MMOs fail, because they don't have that depth of story. They don't have that depth of character. For you to identify with a character, you actually have to know a character, and you have to like a character. And if you play this game long enough, I guarantee you there's a character popping in your head right now that you have tremendous respect for, that you might actually consider to be a hero. And that's one thing that WoW has that a lot of other MMOs don't have. And even though it's not something tangible, it's something very, very real. It's something that tugs at your heartstrings. And whenever you do that, you got a fan for life. The art design team in WoW is amazing. You really can't say a lot of negative things. I can't even think of something negative or some kind of criticism that I could throw at the WoW art team, because they really do have a vision for the game. And I think that this is where the vision for the game has somewhat been consistent and somewhat found a way to pop up and draw you in, from the world itself to the characters that you play and the races that you play. The art team really deserves a lot more credit than what they get currently in the game. They are grossly underrated. They're creative and they're imaginative, and maybe their vision doesn't come to life to the extent that they would like it to come to life, or we would like it to come to life, but you could kind of see it's still there. You could see the concepts and the direction that they want to go, and this consistency is something that's kept people subscribed and immersed in the game for a very, very long time. I'll be very straightforward. I find BFA to be rather unfinished, which is why I haven't been a harsh critic of it as of yet. And it should be finished, but it's not. It feels like it's a work in progress. And I also find it a bit uninspired. But the reality is, I still see remnants from past X-Packs in the game, whether it be combat animations or other features in game that were introduced long ago that still have the same pizzazz that they had on day one. And the common link here is the art. The art direction is amazing. Mop kind of took things to a new level as far as the zones were concerned and the art design. Guess what? Warlords of Draenor the Fun, you could knock almost every single feature in that X-Pack, but one thing you cannot knock is the art direction. It was absolutely phenomenal. But guess what? Legion took it to another level and stepped up the quality of the art direction. And, believe it or not, BFA, the overall zones, the design, the artwork, etc., once again, takes it to another level. Blizzard has consistently set the bar with their art direction and broken through it and set the bar again 4 times in a row, 4 X-Packs in a row. That's pretty hard to do. And this is one big reason that people keep coming back to the game, because that visual, that art direction, that passion is still there. Even if it's something that was introduced in Wrath of the Lich King or something introduced in Kata, it's still there, and it's something that keeps people coming back for more. Very underappreciated, extraordinarily creative and imaginative. You got to take your hat off and say good job, guys. Mythic Plus and raids. This is the gold standard of World of Warcraft, and the industry for that matter. No other MMO does raids like World of Warcraft. No one. Even when things start to go bad with raids, or there's a technical issue with raids, Blizzard is on it and fixes it very, very quickly. Not the same quickness that you might see for PvP. Anything wrong with PvP, it could take weeks. But when there's something wrong with Mythic Plus or Raid, it's not going to take more than a day or two to fix. It's going to be fixed pretty quickly. This is the gold standard of any given MMO out there. This is what they're trying to achieve. Blizzard sets the bar. Blizzard is the bar. And guess what? They consistently raise the bar. This is absolutely huge. And the one big reason why all of these WoW killers have failed is because they didn't have the polished and epic endgame that World of Warcraft has. That is a common denominator of why every single WoW killer didn't actually kill WoW. Because WoW's endgame endures, WoW's endgame survives, even in one of the worst X-Packs ever, Warlords of Draenor the Fun. The biggest complaint was that there wasn't enough raids, there wasn't enough content, which means you like the content. You don't dislike content that you want more of. People liked it. There just wasn't enough of it. That was the biggest complaint on the PvE side of Warlords of Draenor the Fun. The endgame is the Cadillac standard. It is the gold standard. No one comes even close. And we could even say that the PvP has its blemishes, yes, but it's still pretty good. It's compared to other MMOs, it is still pretty good. Trust me. If I thought that there was an MMO that has better PvP, and Guild Wars 2 is starting to come close now, just simply because WoW PvP, the part of it that I enjoy most, which is Battlegrounds, is somewhat tainted and has its issues, but the fact of the matter is, not many MMOs can compare PvP, and no one could even come close when it comes to Mythic Plus or raids. Mythic Plus dungeons have so much potential. They're an esport. Now, some people will say that esports is going to ruin WoW, and the whole idea of people watching Method do the first and get the first Mythic raid kill, that whole esport aspect of that whole thing is kind of bad for the game. But the reality is, I think it's a bad direction for the game with regard to esports. But esports as a whole is the future of gaming, and there's a lot of money in it, and I guarantee you Blizzard is going to follow where the money is because they're greedy, they're a publicly traded company, and you can't blame them. That's like blaming a dog for begging for food. The reality is esports is the future, and yes, we could debate the approach that we want to take. Maybe Mythic Raids is not the right way to go. Mythic Dungeons has had a lot of success in that area, and they could certainly improve with the rating. But one area that is probably going to be the future of any kind of esports for WoW could very well be island expeditions. Now, you might think, oh, Luxley, you're crazy. They kind of suck. The reality is that it is a growth in progress. It is in progress. It is not something that is a finished product yet. I said that in an earlier segment. One of the things I don't like about BFA is that it's unfinished. And one of the bigger unfinished aspects of BFA are the Isle Expedition. They are still adding features. They are still improving it. And if you really play a Mythic version of that, or if you play a PvP version of that, I strongly do believe there is an esports potential there. And it is something very, very interesting to keep an eye on. But when it comes to raids and it comes to Mythic Dungeons, Blizzard's worst day is better than pretty much every single MMO's best day. This is Luxley saying, whatever it is by you, whether it's morning, afternoon, or night, make it epic.